that simple thing, and that's a fundamental limiter to a lot of these businesses' growth. They just fill their day with things that show how clever they are and how powerful they are, rather than doing the things that will enhance the business. But I find that you get leaders who kind of want to be in the popularity contest, so they won't have those difficult conversations. They'll also bend and twist the truth.
Again, hindsight's a great thing, but you say obviously the dumbest thing, but you wouldn't have done it at the time knowing if that was going to happen. So what was it that about that time, or the lessons from that, if we look back in the hindsight, that you could have done differently in that sense?
Is the guys at the top were the guys who had the easiest life, because they'd show up at 10 in the morning, they'd do lunch for about 2 hours, come back, scratch a few letters, sign those off, and be away at 3. And I thought, this is where I'm going to go. I determined I was going to be the boss.
Hello and welcome to Confessions of a Successful Leader, hosted by me, Andrew Tallents, the self-coaching expert. In each episode of the show, we hear the insightful confessions of a successful leader who wants to inspire others to live their professional and personal dreams. I am always keen to hear your feedback, particularly in relation to the kinds of leaders you would like me to invite onto the show in future. But for now, sit back, relax, and enjoy the rich insights from our special guest.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Confessions of a Successful Leader, hosted by me, Andrew Tallents, the self-coaching expert. I'm delighted that Paul Meehan has joined me in the studio today. Paul, welcome.
Hi, Andrew. Good to be here.
Yeah, good to see you. We've already talked about our passion for football, which might come out later on. But for those that haven't come across you before, please introduce yourself to the audience, what it is that you've been doing and where your focus is right now.
Yeah, pretty much most of my career, I've been an insurance broker. He's the guy who sits between the corporate buyer and the insurance company and cuts the deal and buys all the required protections to transfer the risk away from the company. Alongside that, really, when I got into this, I thought there was an opportunity to consolidate in the area. And that's what I've done for maybe 30 years. We built a business which we sold on to AXA in 2008. And since then, I've been doing consultancy, a couple of invested businesses, but really kind of not working full time. I was the cold face for long enough. And I do now what I enjoy doing rather than what I have to do.
Lovely to have choices, and that's what this podcast is all about, how successful leaders achieve that, but also there's some ups and downs on the way. So before we get into that, you've done the classic, which a lot of guests do on my show, and the first thing they do in response to finding out a bit about yourself, it's all about the professional side, which is very important. But about personally you, we've talked about the football a bit earlier. What is it that you do to actually relax, enjoy, hobbies? Just tell us a bit more about that side of you.
I guess the main thing that I've done, and I've done this since I was about 12, is playing music, playing in bands. Now, when things were, tough in the business, I mean, full on, not particularly challenging, it was always a great release to go somewhere every Wednesday, stand up with 4 or 5 guys, play and rehearse things, and have somebody say to you, Paul, what are you doing there? You're a clown. You shouldn't be doing that. Because when you get into business and they grow, you don't kind of get that feedback very regularly. Not many people tell you you're a clown. So it's good to get you down, your feet back on the ground. That's the main thing. Since we sold the business, I do quite a bit in the charity sector, but not in a big way. But today we've been busking in Leeds for the homeless, which we do every month for a particular Friday in the month. So I love doing stuff like that, really. And it's the complete antithesis to what you would normally do in business. And,
absolutely, which is why I asked you. No, so, and what instrument do you
play? Guitar mainly. Play around a bit of keyboards, but not very much. All guitar, but mainly around singing. We've always done harmony, 4-part harmony in all the bands we've done. We did a bit of telly in the 70s. We did a program called New Faces. Thank God we didn't win, because if we had won, I'd have ended up, working till 4 a.m. and not making a lot of money. So that was good. We came third. Thank God.
I remember New Faces, so I'm old enough to remember that. So,
you don't remember New Faces?
I do remember New Faces. Yeah, I do remember New Faces.
An admission indeed.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for that other side. I'm glad I asked you the follow-up questions to that. Thank you. So let's go back. This is all about how was our childhood, that those sort of formative years, forming our early success in leadership, and then how did that then manifest later on as we learned to deal with things in different ways. So take us back when you were a child and what kind of environment you grew up in.
You're a product really of your childhood and the background. My mum and pa both came out of Ireland just after the Second World War, met in Leeds. Dad was a bricklayer, mum was a sort of school cleaner. They had 6 kids. I used to think we were working class until I see what happens today. You see what people have to put up with these days. But I was never aware of any forced expectation. There was nobody pushing us to do well at school. We were just encouraged to follow our nose. But we always felt that we were loved. That was the important thing. I can never remember any insecurity. And the key thing I think I kind of learned, I watched how hard they both worked. And when I used to see my old man come in the winter, trying to warm his hands for about an hour above a coal fire, I remember thinking, I ain't going to do that when I grow up. And that gives you an incentive to kind of do reasonably well at school. So that kind of drove me to find a different approach to making money. And that was a great influence on me. The hard working thing was good. And that's what I have worked quite hard through my career. I think if you do that, you usually succeed.
Absolutely. And what other role models did you have around you at the time? Obviously, you had your brothers and sisters, but in terms of that kind of period around teenage, what other role models were around for you?
I was lucky because I failed my 11 plus because I wanted to go and play a football match. Passed the 13 plus, went to a secondary modern school, which was mixed, which was really valuable just to be alongside the other sex as I was coming through teens. But there were a couple of teachers there who were really, really, really good. And they were fair, they were honest, they told you exactly what they wanted you to do and to be, and they pulled you up if you were doing things wrong. And they were a great influence on me as I went into business down the line. Just little clues as to how to lead, how to gain respect and how to gain trust. And those were subconscious learnings. I wasn't aware of that at the time. But later on, when you asked me the question, I've often thought, what was it in my upbringing that gave me the kind of weaponry that I maybe have used through that period of growing and leading a business? So it's mainly those 2 teachers, alongside my parents, of course.
Yeah. And let's then move into adulthood. So whenever that happens for us now, but let's say 18 onwards, you'd left school. And what was it then about those next 5 or 10 years, how it shaped you as a leader? What kind of experience were you having?
Well, I completely bombed my starting point. I was the third of the children in the family. My 2 elder brothers had both kind of dissipated. I got into A-levels accidentally. I did really well in my A-levels. I didn't expect to do that. And I ended up going to uni, to the London School of Economics. But after a couple of years, I kind of jacked it in. I was in London and I was getting involved with a lot of music. So that was kind of distracting me. I got into that, dropped out of the LSE, went to work at Woolworths. I thought, this is crazy. I was about 21 at that point. And I was on the fruit counter at Woolworths in Cheapside. So I thought I better get a grown-up job now. I've wasted this so far. Went to work with the National Westminster Bank, did really, really well, but then decided I wanted to get back to Leeds. So I ended up in Leeds, aged about 24, with nothing. I'd done nothing so far to 24. And my brother was working in an insurance broker, and he said, because I hadn't a job, he said, you can come and work at our insurance broker, just doing odds and ends. And I got in there and I qualified. I thought, well, I better start doing things properly now. Took 5 years of exams in 3 years, got fully qualified, and then started to really think about that as a career, which is how I got into it. So around about 28, 29, I was doing real well, and I moved on to another brokerage in Wakefield. That was great. I picked up an office manager job. So what I'd seen when I got into insurance is the guys at the top were the guys who had the easiest life, because they'd show up at 10 in the morning, they'd do lunch for about 2 hours, come back, scratch a few letters, sign those off, and be away at 3. And I thought, this is where I'm going to go. I determined I was going to be the boss, because it just seemed to me just easier. That sounds strange, but that's how I was thinking at the time. And then I talked myself into another job in a firm in Leeds, ended up running their insurance brokerage. And the company, which comprised 16 businesses, went into administration in '86. The second business in the UK to go into insolvency under the new Insolvency Act. I managed to get my business out and I got it sold. All the others went into liquidation. And it was then really I got headhunted by a couple of guys who had a business in Harrogate, Smart and Cook. They'd set it up 18 years before I got there, and it was a single site office in Harrogate. Beautiful business, making lots of money, only about 8 people working there. And I was hired because Jeff Cook had got a heart attack and he was off work and they wanted somebody to handle his clients. So I went in there, and that was the start of things because John Smart, he left the business about 5 years after I got there. And Jeff Cook and I mean, I said to Jeff, I'm bored witless working here. You're making lots of money, but now you've come back, I've got nothing to do. So he said, well, what should we do? I said, well, why don't we try and buy something? And he said, that's a great idea. What should we do? This is what happens. So we went off and I said, we need to buy something that we can get to in an hour. Because if the roof blows off or it goes badly, we can get there and fix it. So we bought 4 businesses, Scarborough, Skipton, Grimsby and York. We were in Harrogate. So we kind of had
Can
a
you
nice...
stop me there? Can you stop there? It's really interesting, Paul. And people listening to this and watching it are thinking, well, you mean let's go and buy a business. And you say, and then suddenly you're buying 4 businesses, but you'd never bought businesses before.
Now, I'll tell you what we decided, because Jeff had been off with a heart attack. He came back after 6 months. I'd got all his clients, so he really had nothing to do. So what he did was he started to work on the business rather than in the business, client work. And that proved to be immensely valuable because he'd be really tweaking all the margins we were getting from the insurers. He was looking at costs and he was really examining what we could do. And we'd kind of, if you like, we'd polish the vehicle to the nth degree. But what we said is, if we can get another business that needs all this doing, we can pay for £1 of profit and we can get £2.5 of profit when we put all our systems in. So we were really confident that we could enhance a business that we bought. We thought we knew what we were doing. And that's exactly what happened. We were arbitraging the revenue and the profitability by bringing into those businesses really good practices, which a lot of insurance brokers don't do because they're good client people, but they're not very good business people. So that's how we started. They weren't big businesses, so we didn't go borrowing loads of money. We bought them out of working capital, and we managed them centrally. So that worked quite well. And then you get confident. You think, oh, let's do some further afield. But insurance broking is really very simple as a business. There's no stock and there's no machinery. You buy policies for people for £100. They give you £100 and you take £10 off commission. Pay the insurers £90. It's very difficult to get into any bad debt or into redundant stock and the kind of issues that affect much more complex businesses. It's very simple.
And let's just pause there for a moment. So you were going through this as being successful, and so it was the real start of kicking things on. So what were you learning about yourself as a leader at that age in terms of what had been working and what you needed to maybe do differently?
I think when I kind of started out in a leadership role, I assumed that if I got good people around me, they would behave in the way I would behave. So they'd be kind of they wanted to be really the best they could be. They were ambitious. They were looking to make an impression on those around them, particularly above them. And I kind of I hired people and I'd sort of leave them to do what I thought they should do. Not long before I discovered that actually we're not all like that. You can be the best guy on the planet. So you then go, this is not really working very well. I get good people, particularly competent people. What I found around the business is you get competent people, but they'd actually be quite cynical, some of them. They'd seen the company in all its years and all that, and you'd come along with something new and they'd shout it down behind your back. So, we call these competence. And so where you get to is you start to have difficult conversations. Conversations people find difficult because they're direct. And you're saying to people, well, I kind of like what you're doing, but you're not following the journey that we're actually aiming to go. Really important also, I found, is to be clear with people where you're headed. Again, a lot of businesses, they know where they're going, but they just kind of let the people around them working be in their own little centers of whatever they're doing. And there's a lack of connectivity. So I was kind of seeing that. So the thing I learned is you've got to tell them where you're going, make sure everybody's on the bus. And if they're not on the bus, you do have to have difficult conversations. So those were two of the main things. And you got good people, but you got people who make things happen. People who just watch what's happening. And some people go, "What the hell happened?" It's a learning. But once you get along with that, you're moving in the right direction. But the culture of the business is it's so important, and it's so difficult. If you can get the right kind of people operating in the right kind of way, you've cracked it really. On the journey to grow and to improve. That was my view. So rather than sitting back and saying, I've got the right people, they'll all do what they should do, they're great, they'll impress me, they want to lead. No, none of that. It doesn't work like that. You've got to get right into them, tell them where you're going, and make sure that they're all on the bus. And if they're not on the bus, it doesn't matter how good they are, they're gone. It's just you got to get the culture right.
So tell us about the next 10 years then. So, and again, with the theme of what is it you were learning, what was maybe finding a bit more difficult during that period?
We did those 4, and then what Jeff said to me, and this was tough. He said, you're not going to have any more insurance clients. You're going to pass them on to other people. Because at the time I was kind of doing both client person, new business, and managing the businesses. And he said, we're going to grow now to such a degree, you cannot do insurance business anymore. And I said, Jeff, I'm the best sales guy in the business. He said, I don't care. You only do what nobody else can do. If somebody else can do it, delegate it. What a great lesson that was. So I get rid of all my clients, and then I'm actually spending my time executing the strategy that the two of us had agreed. Jeff's in the back office, I'm in the front of office running the business as CEO. And then you learn all sorts of things. Because what we did was we started to open businesses. We opened a business in Newcastle, we opened a business in Edinburgh, we opened a business in Glasgow. And what we also started to do then was, rather than buy businesses, it was to hire really good teams from other businesses, bring them into our business, and then effectively set them up and buy something for them to run locally. That worked quite well. So we were on a journey then up to around about 2005 of growing the business. What then happened is we couldn't do it out of working capital. So we brought an insurer in. They bought some shares in our business, which was the dumbest thing we ever did, because we bought them out for about 3 times what they paid us 3 years later, because we wanted to get back and keep all of our equity.
And Paul, that's really interesting. And just I'm going to go into that a bit more. So again, hindsight's a great thing, but you say obviously the dumbest thing, but you wouldn't have done it at the time knowing if that was going to happen. So what was it that about that time, or the lessons from that, if we look back in the hindsight, that you could have done differently in that sense?
Well, the only reason we brought them in was because we needed finance. All the acquisitions we did really worked quite well. Don't get me wrong, we dropped some real bad things along the way. You make so many mistakes, but you fix the mistakes. And we brought them in. They were keen to come in. We got funds off them and use the funds, but we were enhancing the equity value so quickly that they were kind of on our backs taking a free ride. So we got rid of them. And then in 2005, what we did was we went out for PE money using Deloitte's, and we brought in 3i as partners. That worked really, really well, because they secured a substantial facility for us with Royal Bank, and that gave us a revolving facility of about 30 million. So we could then go much, much bigger. Unfortunately, Jeff passed away in 2000 and 6 in his sleep at age 58. He'd had heart trouble, which I identified earlier. That left me running the whole show, which was fine. And I spent a lot of 3i money, and we did exceedingly well in those 3 years. One of the great learnings for me then was that 3i put an excellent non-exec in with me to kind of to cover their interests, but also to guide me. And that was just that. The learning there was phenomenal. I've done a number of NXD jobs since I sold, but he was so good. He quizzed me, and if I said I was going to do something, he was great at going, "What happened?" And a lot of people don't do that. It's that accountability. It's a lot of people, they go, and this was one of the great things, because I'd say, "I want to buy this business." He'd go, "Give me a pro forma for the first year," and I'd give him what we're going to do. And after 12 months, he'd bring it out and go, "Well, look what happened." But every time they were better than what I'd said, so that was okay. God forbid if they'd have been not as what I said. I wouldn't have got any money and consent from 3i. So that was a really interesting experience. As a non-exec, it's really important to guide and to advise and to warn. That's a bit like the monarch to the government. It's about arm's length. If you want to do it, that's fine, but this might happen, and if it does happen, it's you're the guy who's accountable for it. That was really, really valuable, and just doing what you say you're going to do, which is another thing that's quite rare in business.
I agree. And what I love about what you said there, just to pause, is that there are two things coming up for me there, which are really useful for the audience to, I guess, really understand. Is I call what you were talking about before about this delegation thing, The Art of Essentialism, which is a great book written by Greg McKeown. And it's this thing, even in that role when you were CEO, there's probably only 6 to 8 things that you needed to do as CEO that only you could do to make that business successful. And a lot of it's stakeholder management, isn't it? Relationship management, leading the team.
Absolutely.
So if you can focus on that, but the problem is many CEOs like to do more than that because they're interested in these various things, or they're very good at, or they're really good at selling or whatever, and it's so difficult for them to let go. And that's where the NED, or your mentor, or your coach, or whatever it is, that holds you to account as accountability partner, because of course we do know a lot of CEOs don't get held to account at all, is so critical when you're delegating. So I think that's a really good example you brought together there, tying those two things together.
Yeah, and having done consultancy for God knows how many years now, this is something I see all the time, where chief execs, MDs, they spend their time doing what they want to do. Yeah. That's the first thing that's wrong. Don't think about whether somebody else could do it. And the other thing that they do, which I find quite funny, really, they operate in a parent-child culture. So, and they think, I'm all powerful, I'm the boss, I know everything. And everybody around them learns. If they have a problem, if they bring it into him, he'll go, "Oh, give it to me, I'll sort that out." And they just put a monkey on his back instead of saying, "Well, you tell me what the answer is." And that simple thing. And that's a fundamental limiter to a lot of these businesses' growth. They just fill their day with things that show how clever they are and how powerful they are, rather than doing the things that will enhance the business. The Stephen Covey book is really interesting, the seven habits, because he talks about urgent and important, and not urgent important, and the not urgent important things are the things that never get done in those businesses. They just they put fires out, and that's it. You've seen this in many of the businesses you work with, and it's difficult to get people to understand where to spend their time. Really, really difficult.
So take us through to the sale then. So obviously, Jeff is no longer around. You're leading the business and obviously spending the money, etc. But you're getting to this point. So tell us about the learning there, about what was successful, and maybe again some of the things that you look back and think, maybe could have done that a bit differently.
Well, what I wanted to do with 3i work with Jeff having gone, they got a little nervous because they thought one of us was the organ grinder, one of us was the monkey. I think they thought I was the monkey, but that's by the by. But so we kind of moved a bit faster towards a sale than we perhaps would have done. And I said to them, if we're going to sell, I don't really want to sell to another broker, because that's going to result in some cuts and some carnage in our various businesses if there's duplication of offices. So we ended up selling the business to AXA Insurance, who at the time were buying brokers. They'd bought 3, we were the 4th. That was a good move, but again, I don't know whether you see this, but a lot of the big acquirers tend to destroy value. It's just how they do it. They move on without integrating, and they expect the business to do as well as it did when they bought it. And in insurance broking, they're buying goodwill, which is a vapor that can evaporate quite quickly if you don't nurture it. And so over time, our businesses have dissipated into the mists. Was there a learning? Well, not really. I didn't see how we could continue because the PE guys want to get out. If you do a secondary buyout, fine. But at the time, AXA were kicking the doors into buyers. They were throwing ridiculous money on the table, and it was too good to refuse. Then we get into AXA. They said to me, "We'd like to continue running the business." Then the MD of AXA UK came to the 4 businesses and said, "We only need 1 CEO, not 4. Can you go away and decide who's going to be the CEO?" And we all went away and came back saying, "We all want to lead it." And they picked the other guy. So I was out on the streets because I said I wouldn't work with any of the others. So another mistake. Many times I ended out on the street and I thought, oh, fair enough, that's fine. And then I picked up some non-exec work. And then within probably 6 months, the chap who'd made the decision, he got fired, and his successor called me up and asked me to go back to work with him in the insurance company, which was much bigger business than the brokers. So I went back there. That was a fantastic experience because suddenly, you've got a guy who's been running a small owner-led insurance brokerage to a absolutely massive, corporate business, which AXA is and was. That was just amazing. It was fantastic. Everybody in the management of AXA figured out they knew what was happening on the front line, but they had not got a clue as to what was happening. It was totally different. Again, I'm sure in big businesses, they hired me and they said, "What do you want to do?" I said, "I want to go to the front of the business and find out what's going on because that's where the action happens. And if the people at the front of the business are working well with our customers, then that's a formula for success. But we have no idea if that's happening." And I'll give you one tiny example. I ended up running all of the claims business. I went off to the claims team in Ipswich, listened to the calls, and the calls notification, the first notification of loss took 40 minutes on a car accident. 40 minutes. "Hello, AXA Insurance, can I take your policy number?" And off it went, on us. And I said, "Why don't you put in there when they tell you they've had a crash, 'Are you okay?'" "Oh yeah, that's okay. That sounds good. And if there's anybody in the car, is your son okay?" "Yeah, he's fine." "Right, let's get on and fill this form in." And then they said, "Oh, that's going to take 3 months to get into the script." I said, "No, it isn't. We can just do it straight away." So we did it straight away, and I get back into the centre. My boss, he comes in and says, "What have you done down in Ipswich?" I said, "So, what do you mean, Philip?" He says, "Our customer satisfaction scores have gone up from 34 to 64, 66 in 3 months. What have you done?" Oh, I said, "It's really complicated." When I went back 6 months later, the guys on the front line said they got much better conversations. Instead of people saying, "Oh, why does this take so long?" They'd suddenly got empathy initially by just saying that simple thing. "Are you okay?" "Yeah, I'm fine. Thanks for asking." And off it went. That's just one of the dozens and dozens of little things that you can change that transform businesses, big businesses, but it doesn't happen. And you'll know yourself, Andrew, when your experience with businesses can be a range of absolute brilliance, if you look at somebody like First Direct, to absolute abysmal of name any 30 other businesses. And it's about the person in the front.
Absolutely.
So that's what I did. And then I left. Yeah. My boss got sacked, and so I left. I made quite a few enemies with my Yorkshire route to direct approach. Yeah.
Well, that builds us on to what some people listening to this or watching this might be interested in as well now, in the sense of the transition, because you've now been obviously living a portfolio life for a number of years and you have choice with that. You choose how you live your life and that. So just talk to us a bit about that transition, why the timing was right, how you found it challenging or not. And and just tell us a bit about that stage.
Yeah, so that was great. It was 2011. I'd got these non-exec jobs that I'd picked up when I'd had this hiatus between the broker and AXA. So I'd continued with those, and I kind of threw myself into those to help them grow because they'd all got ambitions to repeat what we'd done in many ways. I got invested in another broker in 2013, a small broker in Darlington, non-exec chairman. We took that group by about 4 or 5 times and sold it into 2020. I invested in a business in Dubai, which was kind of strange, but I was in Abu Dhabi and I met this guy and he was trying to get rid of the Arabs in his business, and I really liked him a lot, and I bought them out. So I now own 30% of a school meals coffee business in Dubai, which it just encourages me to go to Dubai because I like going there. So I wouldn't go if I didn't have that. And consultancy, me and a colleague at Richard Pitt, he runs his own insurance consultancy. We've sold 5 or 6 businesses, and we've helped to buy 3 or 4. So I get phone calls to do all sorts of things, and I say yes or no, depending on who it is or what it is, where it is. And I've got that marvelous luxury of just taking on what I want to do, and I'm gradually winding down. I'm losing touch with the business as it is today, and I wouldn't pretend that's any different. But the basic principles are still there. The basic principles of really knowing your business, being brave, learning from your mistakes, and what Richard and I have done. We did a 2-year program with 60 businesses, 60 brokers, took them through a business of just a program of making their businesses better across every single front you can imagine. You know, the way that they sell, the way that they renew, the way that they run their teams, the way that they market themselves, all that. And that's been really, really valuable for us and them. And we hugely increased the value of those businesses over that time. But it was around the leadership principles, you know, how to lead and how to get things done through others. And that's where we encounter this nonsense of parent-child culture and all that thing, you know. So
Absolutely.
yeah. Now I just kind of do what I want, go out and busk for the homeless or play my guitar. It's great. It's fantastic.
Absolutely. I've got a couple more questions for you before we finish up. It's been fascinating hearing your story today. The first is, because you've been a successful leader, you've demonstrated that through creating value and obviously selling it to a business that thought there was value in it. So from your perspective, looking back now in your career, with all the things that have happened, what have you found most challenging about your own leadership style in terms of how it's sometimes got in the way of relationships? Because we all do have those elements to us. But what's the one thing for you that about you and the way that you lead that sometimes gets in the way?
The thing about leading a business, I've found, is that all I want from anybody in a business is respect. That's all I want. And you've got to earn that leading, and you've got to, you know, say what you mean and mean what you say and be honest, and actually do what you say you're going to do. A lot of people I see in business, they kind of want to be liked. I have never ever wanted to be liked. I am liked actually by quite a few people I work with, but if people are not doing what they should be doing, then I'll be the first to drag them up and tell them. Now they're not going to like me doing that. But I find that you get leaders who kind of want to be in the popularity contest, so they won't have those difficult conversations. They'll also bend and twist the truth to tell people what they want to hear, which is fatal, because when you do that, guess what? They're going to find you out, and they're going to think, I have a liar as a boss, and without the trust, they're just not going to do what you want them to do. You've lost the audience. So, do the things where people will respect you absolutely implicitly, and that means never ever losing your internal reputation. And if people don't like you, that's fine. That's all. That's the one thing that I think is really important to understand in business. And it surprises me how many leaders either can't understand that or won't understand it. And, the business that they lead is much poorer as a result, because good people will not work for crap leaders. It's just that simple. They'll go and go work for somebody else. Doesn't matter how much you pay them. It's not about that. It's about being together in a joint purpose to get somewhere, a destination. And they'll only follow you if they respect and trust you, in my experience. So that's the one lesson I've learned.
Sure. And final question for me, and it goes back to your earlier life, really. So, what is one or two things that you think you might have missed out on in life by not necessarily pursuing that musical career?
What have I
Keep it
missed out?
clean. Keep it clean for me.
Yeah. I've missed out on a lot of traveling, a lot of late nights, early mornings, a lot of enormous fun that you have. I mean, people see music as a glamorous thing to do it. When you've done it as we did it, it's not that glamorous at all. You know, doing a gig is going to be 12, 14 hours in a day, and you're on stage for two. And those 2 hours are absolutely tremendous, but the rest of it's just a grunt, you know. Arrive at a venue somewhere at 2 in the afternoon, do a sound check till 4:30, go off and get some really crap food because you just have to eat. Come back, do the show, get the show done. You've got so much adrenaline, you can't sleep, but you can't sleep anyway because you're in a strange bed, you know. And then you wake up the following day at 11, 12, and off it goes again. So it's a tremendously enjoyable career in part, but you'll never ever make any money. It's like footballers, you know. 90% of footballers can't make a cent, and then at 34 they're out, you know. So I am absolutely delighted that I didn't get into that as a career. And the other thing that I think, just going back to the learnings, and I think doing the music as a part-time thing leads you on to think, well, making a stack of cash is not everything. And a lot of people, a lot of my contemporaries have done that, and they missed out on the other things, you know, the hobbies, the family, the marriage, the relationships, their internal sort of soul, or whatever you want to call it. Robin Sharma has written a great book about that, the true purpose of wealth, the 8 factors to do with it. Great book. Really, really gives you a holistic picture of how you should be going at your life and what you should be focusing on. And material wealth is one of 8 things. It's good to do it because if you achieve that, it will help you to accomplish maybe 5 or 6 of the other things. So
if you live long enough, that's the thing.
That's it. You think, but that's the other thing that they tend not to do is look after their health. You know, they kind of they just charge ahead, probably drink too much, smoke too much, don't go to the gym, all that. So those are the learnings, I guess.
Yeah.
And as you say, so far so good. Clinging to the wreckage.
Listen, the time's flown by. I've really enjoyed your time in the studio today. Thanks for coming on the show, and I wish you a happy next few years as you sort of slow down a little bit and enjoy that music a bit more.
Thanks a lot, Andrew. I appreciate it.
All right, take care.
Cheers.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Confessions of a Successful Leader. You can access all previous episodes of the show at confessionsofaSuccessfulLeader.com. If you are interested in finding out more about conscious leadership and self-coaching, just type in Andrew Tallents into LinkedIn or your favorite browser, and you'll find my contact details and all the content that you need. Until next time, don't forget to stay present, curious, and above all, conscious.